suffering, the pain, the horror. Excuse me. I'm sorry, just a moment. Sorry, I live on a rural community right along a railroad track, and one of them was going by. I will start again. Dementia diminishes. Celebrate life is a cry for understanding, empathy for the life within the suffering, the pain, the horror, the isolation, utter loneliness of living with this invisible disease, surrounded by a world of stigma and misinformation. Yet, and still life as is must be lived within and without. To acknowledge the reality of the experience is not to be diminished by it. In fact, it is to celebrate life by being true to self as you are within, thus making your reality a boon to what has become and will be throughout your life lived. Dementia takes. It also gives in a way that can only be imagined by those unaffected by the journey. Thus, to celebrate life in all the little and the large ways that are, is a gift to self and to the world. Courage is addictive and contagious. Dementia diminishes. Celebrate life. Dementia diminishes, strips you down to nothing. Too late to cry. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia steals your soul. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia, me, myself, and I shook hands and said goodbye. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia, it was time to go. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia diminishes. Draw a clock, lose your mind. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia, be a child one more time. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia, future, past, present, never lasts. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia, a stranger in your strange life will pass too soon. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia diminishes. Golden years turn to trash and ash. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia, your life fire long drowned out. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia, what was within is now without. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia diminishes. Big, tall, deep, and strong. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia becomes sad, small, frail, and gone. Dementia, celebrate life. Dementia, paradox between the hard place and the rock. Dementia, celebrate life. Spirit soars, yet still life dreams of fullness when time was forever. Dementia, celebrate life. Heart clings to hope, a slick tear-soaked rock face up so high. Dementia, celebrate life. There's only one way to go from here. Let go. Dementia, celebrate life. The fall will be brief and you won't feel a thing. Dementia, celebrate life. Thank you. So, I had to really double promise to myself not to cry because it tends to tear me up. And I'm glad I made through most of it. Now, on to the wonderful woman of Emily Ong, who is a current board member of Dementia Alliance International and has been living with young onset dementia since 2017. Emily is also a wife, a mother, a special educational needs SEN advisor, and a dementia advocate. Emily is also a member of the Alzheimer's Disease International Accreditation Global Review Panel, member of the Alzheimer's Disease International Scientific Program Committee for the ADI 2022 conference, a focus group member of the World Health Organization Global Dementia Observatory, GDO project, and a co-designer and co-facilitator of the Dementia Singapore Voices for Hope program. Talk about multidimensional. Emily, yes. Emily, as I mentioned, Emily, you are wonderful. How do you find time for all of that?
That's a good question. Maybe because I have a very poor sense of time, so I always have time.
That helps. Yes, yes, indeed. So without further ado, please, Emily Ong, everyone. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Granville, for the lovely poem and dementia and celebrate life. And yeah, this is what we are hoping to get for. Despite we live with cognitive impairment, we have every right to celebrate our life still, despite the limitations. Because I would say that people living with dementia, while we have our brain not functioning at the full capacity like used to be, actually every day we are good problem solver, and we give ourselves a big celebration. And like what Granville said in the poem, celebration and not celebrate our life. It is, we are. Yeah, so thank you for having me here, and it's my honor to able to meet all of you in Canada. I hope one day I can really land in Canada. Other than this, this is my first virtual to meet everyone in Canada. Yeah, so let me start with sharing my my PowerPoint. Yeah, can everybody see the slide?
Yeah, it looks good, Emily.
Okay,
That's
thanks.
good.
Yeah, so today my topics will be about raising awareness on dementia issue and action needed. And as just now Medical said, what you call, Granville also mentioned that I'm from Dementia Alliance International. And so today I will be representing myself as Amelie, as an advocate, and also at the same time as a voice of this Dementia Alliance International, an independent body of the voice of people living with dementia. Now, a bit of a self-introduction, other than a wife and a mother, is all the things that which Granville just now already introduced. On top of this, I do have a life, okay, other than advocacy. Is I love cooking and baking, and that is and baking is something that is a very new skill that I picked up during the COVID pandemic, where I go to online and I learn how to bake bread, and it's incredible. I have been baking since then. And the other things that I have initiated is the Environment and Dementia Special Interest Group, which is under the umbrella of Dementia Alliance International, where the aim is to look at environment in all aspects, because that is one criteria that is often overlooked when it comes to supporting people living with dementia. And when you talk about quality of life, that is one aspect that we need to look into, not just the physical aspect of environment, but all the things in the environment that how we experience and how we interact with it, including social environment. Yeah. And of course, for this initiative, I have Professor Habib to thanks because since he visited Singapore, I get to know him and I get to know someone who is very passionate in environment. So thank you, Habib. Yeah. So today's topic, I'll be talking about diagnosis and living with dementia, and then stigma and discrimination and advocacy and CRPD, which is a big thing, a big mission of us in Dementia Alliance International. So first, let me talk about a little bit about my diagnosis. Now, I was diagnosed in 2017, and I think at 50 years old, I'm very poor in math. Okay, so it was, you might notice that I put a picture of a French toast. This is a normal breakfast serving in my family. So unfortunately, that morning, I was not able to make my French toast as what I planned because suddenly my brain just go into short circuit and I have no recollection of that. I know how to make a French toast, that I have made it before, but my emotion part of my brain have that feeling that I know how to make, but my rational part of my brain said, no, you don't know how to make. And so it was the first alarm call that something is seriously very wrong. And at that time, it's also lucky that my elder daughter was a first-year medical student, and she just studied that. It's something that someone that has been doing a particular thing all the time, and suddenly the person start to have difficulties and struggle. That is something that is a red flag that calls for go to a visit to a neurologist. Yeah. So then, but my diagnosis journey was not one of a smooth one, because my first diagnosis was a type of neurodegenerative disorder, which we call fatal familial insomnia (FFI). It is a type of it is a prion disease, and it's very deadly. And I was put on medications for that, and it was a very heavy medication that could have been avoided if the doctor had been a bit more holistic in their diagnosis rather than just look a particular aspect of my issue, that is insomnia. Yeah. So then later on, I was diagnosed with young onset Alzheimer and was put on Exelon patch again for another half a year or so. And again, that was a wrong diagnosis, and my body had to slowly, the medication had to be slowly removed from my body. And again, there is this issue of the doctor was just too what you call too confident in his diagnosis even before the result of the lumbar puncture is out and the MRI scan is out. He already said that I have young onset Alzheimer. And then it was only later on the result showed that I don't have, and until now I have been on provisional FTD. So that is about my diagnosis journey. Now, living with dementia, well, I have learned to slow down and be very kind to my brain, because it is something that before dementia, I tend to take my brain for granted, or because you just know how to get around to do things. You don't need to think, and you don't need to really plan real hard or to break down a task into what you call break down the task into steps so that you can able to manage it. But once you live with dementia, everything changed. You change the way you look at life also, and you start to appreciate your brain. And please appreciate your brain. And then I become very proactive in putting strategy in place, external aids in place to compensate my cognitive impairment. And I do have that advantage because I was what you call an advisor and also an educator in special needs. And until now, I'm still an advisor, but on volunteer basis to visit schools, to supporting parents and teachers for children who are on special needs, but they are in the mainstream educations. Yeah. So rehabilitation is a big thing in my life, and that is something that I'm working very hard with. Kate Swafford, who is the CEO and co-founder of Dementia Alliance International. So we are working very hard to push for rehabilitation as part of the primary, package, healthcare package for people living with dementia. And then, of course, the other thing is that I living with dementia brings me the gift of you don't have time to procrastinate. Okay, you just do it. How bad can it be? You just do it. So that I'm not that I have a very serious procrastination problem, but you do procrastinate when you have ample of time to do so. But when you live with dementia, you are every day is racing against the time. You are like what before the start of the talk, Granville and me, we were discussing that. And now while we still have the ability, we will make use with what we have, to continue to do the things that we can do. Like for him is art. Yeah. So that is what you just do it. And then so living with dementia, well, I have to have all these kind of impairment and struggles, but it made me stronger as a person because, like what I said, every day we manage to get out of bed, do whatever that it needs to do. It takes lots of energy and a brain wave and brain neuron firing and things like that. And I come to think of that we are very good problem solvers. So it makes me very strong as a person. Now, when I want to talk about stigma, I think the best one is this. I have started to produce, resource material by people living with dementia, and this is one of the resource that I developed, whereby I interview people living with dementia and their care partners. So let's watch this rather than for me to talk about stigma from our country here, in our Asia Pacific region.
There are stigma in all societies, and people feel, first of all, that there's a misunderstanding that people with dementia are old people, number one, and that they are also showing symptoms more of Alzheimer's, and they feel that people with dementia has no more capabilities, that we are crazy, we talk rubbish, we are unable to move, unable to feed ourselves, and like nearly totally incapacitated, not only physically but mentally disruptive.
Yeah.
To me, it's like that I don't want to associate to you.
As far as I know, stigma is, well, as the word stigma is something that is stuck onto us.
Yes.
Based on people's impression, rightly or wrongly, of our, well, first, our behavior, right? Rightly or wrongly, whether our behavior to them is good or bad. or well, acceptable or unacceptable.
Yes.
And being as a stigma, it means that they don't see us in a very good light, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
we are normal, maybe not exactly abnormal, but not what they expect of a normal.
Yeah. So this one is my conversation with people living with dementia. So I purposely interview 3 people living with dementia. One is with young onset Alzheimer, one is with PPA, primary progressive aphasia, and one is a senior living with vascular dementia. So next is, other than that, I also want to highlight and then shed the stigma on people from different culture, because in Singapore we are multicultural society. So I want people to understand that stigma, how is it from different culture. So let me share this with you. The stigma is very related to the face value, because because if you are living with a condition, regardless whether it's stigma or something that is not perceived as very good one, then it's not like it brings down the value of the family. And also that is why people living with dementia, if you are from a Chinese family, they will try not to disclose it to protect the family image and value.
With living with dementia, we're like, oh, we get so shocked, how could it be,
Yeah.
And what actually happened, and yeah, because in our religion, if we believe we are very religious, God won't fall this illness upon a person, you see.
Yes.
And to read a lot of recital Quran every day, there's a saying that you won't have a dementia.
I see. Okay.
So somehow or other, it's like a face value too, like, oh, maybe this person, he doesn't, or he or she doesn't read the Quran frequently. That's why he or she inflicted with it.
From what I understand, right? Like, okay, within my extended family, there is that level of shame that is attached to anyone who has any condition. And I find that very hard to accept on a personal front, because I believe that there's no human being out there whose life is perfect. Everyone has got some condition, or some childhood trauma, or some problem in life. But when we attach that shame and that amount of guilt that is placed onto care partners, it becomes very unhealthy. I find the Indian culture, and be it, whether it is a Hindu or Muslim or Jewish or Christian or Buddhist family, Jain family, that tends to be, I'll probably get shot for saying this, but there tends to be that level of drama, present in the family. So any diagnosis, is often met with, oh my God, what did we do to deserve this? Or, did we do something wrong in life? This is karma coming to bite.
Yeah, so this one is a sharing from the care partners, and then one is a spouse and one is caring for her elderly father. And we all come from different race. Myself is from Chinese, and then one from India, Indian culture, and then one from the Malay culture. So this is more like to give you the perspective of the, stigma from cultural stigma, how it impacts people living with dementia and also their care partner. Just now, as I mentioned, that I love to use the artwork and work of people living with dementia, and this is the art piece from Gail Gregory from UK, a person living with dementia. She is very good, and I love this. The drawing of hers of the hand. It really shows, and I found that is so appropriate for this slide on stigma, discrimination, and impact. Now, the assumption of incapacity is the greatest stigma that we have to face as a person living with dementia, because upon diagnosis, straight away, it's just like overnight, we lost from a person who can do everything to a person who cannot even take care of ourselves. So that is a very big assumption of the incapacity, and that is also you can notice that in the caregiving journey, and while most of the care partners are doing out of love, but that assumption of incapacity and the mental capacity act is something that I am working very hard to get care partner to understand what does it mean. When we talk about someone who has incapacity, are you providing the information in the manner that the person living with dementia is able to understand and make use of the information to make a decision, rather than you take away that decision ability of the person. Now, and as you know, the World Alzheimer Report 2021 just out, and it shows that 1 in 3 clinicians have this belief that nothing can be done. And when the clinicians like this feel that there's that there's nothing can be done when a person living with dementia, it will stop them from diagnosing someone, give that diagnosis that someone is living has dementia, and that will stop that someone from getting the necessary support and services also. Then the social exclusion, which is strongly what you call another one of the huge issue that we face as a person living with dementia, being excluded from family, and even within the family unit, not necessarily every family members will be able to accept the diagnosis, and they still expect the people that their parents living with dementia is still able to function like they used to be. And when they are not able to do that, instead of supporting, they just felt that, okay, cut the person away, and in any of the social occasions, try not to involve the person in this kind of celebration. And the other one is a very huge one, is the karma or the punishment. As you can see from the sharing just now, and now for us, our Chinese culture is what you call the destiny. It's written in your life, you destined that you are going to do this, live with this condition, and then for the Indian culture is the karma, that something bad that you had done, and for the Malay culture is that you have not been very diligent and in your recitations of the Holy Quran, and that is why you are being punished for that. And each of these, make the person living with dementia feel very guilty about themselves, and they learn helplessness, because it's already destined that I'm going to be like this, and it's a punishment. What can I do? I just let continue to be like that, and until the day I die. And then it creates that access disability, whereby when the brain is actually the decline of what you call the cognitive impairment is actually not that severe, but because of all this stigma and discrimination, it creates that access disability when the family members, or when they being told so many times that they are not able to do this, so they learn to stop doing things. So that creates that accessibility of, you are not going to use it, you are going to lose it. And for people living with dementia, these are not lose it, and you don't use it, you lose it is even faster. And then with the clinicians of 1 in 3 felt that there's nothing can be done, so it's best not to give that diagnosis to the person, even though they suspect that person might be living might have, dementia. So that barriers to the diagnosis stop the person from getting the necessary support and help. And then, of course, while everyone knows about it, there is so much talking about dementia awareness, that dementia is not the normal part of aging. And but then the knowing is not enough. We must apply, and willing is not enough. We must do. That is the quote from Bruce Lee. And that is why advocacy from people living with dementia, we are trying to do, that knowing is not enough. We need to we need to call for action. So now, briefly, just a little bit about Dementia Alliance International is that, and unlike all the other organizations that have people living with dementia, Dementia Alliance International is an independent self-advocacy organization, because I felt that as an independent body, it is very important in getting our voice across, instead of just being representing an organization, not like a national dementia organization. And it has its own benefits also. And at Dementia Alliance International, we focus a lot on developing the leadership of people living with dementia. So when I started, I know nothing about advocacy in the dementia world. While all the while I have been an advocate, in consumer rights, in disability. But when I was diagnosed with dementia, I didn't know that a person living with dementia can continue to do advocacy and advocating the human rights also. So it is through Dementia Alliance International, I learned and become a very strong advocate. At first is within my own country, Singapore, and then later on I moved to regional and global. And one thing about Dementia Alliance International is that we have this we have that consultative rights that is given by United Nations to be able to attend the Conference of State of Parties on the Convention on the Rights of People with a Disability, or CRPD. And that is very important, because we are the only organizations of people living with dementia that can participate in the meetings in the United Nations. And that is one way for us to push for the healthcare for people living with dementia. And especially, as you know, that if you have attended the launch of the World Alzheimer report 2 nights ago, it talks about that, 90% of the clinicians felt that there will be a very, additional delays in the diagnosis of dementia because of the COVID. So while we acknowledge that COVID is creating, is a big issue now in the global world, we also don't want, because of the COVID, the needs and the issue of people living with dementia and access to rehabilitations and early diagnosis is being put on hold because of the COVID. Yeah. So advocacy and CRPD, especially in the CRPD, is very important for me, and also as a board member of Dementia Alliance International. And that is why I now started to create a dementia education resource made by people living with dementia. And as just now what you have seen, and to showcase that, there are issues faced by us, and it has to be from our perspective to show you that how it impacts our quality of life. And then supporting others live positively is a very big part of, as a member of Dementia Alliance, and the peer-to-peer support group for people living with dementia. While it is more available in a Western country, it is not available in our East Asia, in our region here, in most countries, in the lower to middle income countries, that support, peer-to-peer support for people living with dementia is absent. And even in Singapore, I recently, because of the COVID, I initiated and started one peer-to-peer support group for people living with dementia in Singapore. And the need to call for implementation of CRPD, not only in national level, but in all aspects that is related to people living with dementia, the environment, the housing, and then even into the as basic as into the caregiving journey, the CRPD. And then the urgency of dementia issue, and as you know, we are very far behind in the national dementia plan. A lot of the countries around the world still don't have national dementia plan, and so the same thing is in Singapore. We don't really have a national dementia plan. We do have one that is an aging plan, which incorporated dementia. So because of that, it is not a specific focus. Dementia issue faced by people with young onset is often being what you call not attended to. And so I'm very happy that, recently I managed to have my first meeting with the Ministry of Health to talk about, the dementia issue and also the young with the dementia issue concerning young onset. Yeah, then for us and for my service, regional collaborations among our country around our region here is very important because because of our cultural differences. So there is things that methods that is being used in the Western country that we would like to adopt, but because of cultural differences, there is a lot of changes that we need to modify, and so we cannot, as a one country, do it by ourselves. So we sort of collaborate within our own countries within the region here. And the other thing is that, and why am I very active in the global platform, is because I want to increase the Asian representation in the dementia platform, because only then it is a more holistic representations of the dementia issue in around the world. So these are the initiatives ongoing, current, and in the pipeline that I'm doing, either under Dementia Alliance International umbrella or within my own capacity. So the peer-to-peer support group, La Copy Limited, is under the DAI umbrella also, and then what you call the environment. Sorry, there is a mistake here. Is environment and dementia, not DE, is ED. Special interest support, special interest group, which these are all under the DAI umbrella. What it means is that it goes by the logo of DAI. That is basically, and it's still basically under, and I have to manage it because we don't have enough manpower. So whatever initiative that a DAI member initiated, it has to be continued to be under that person, and but it's just under the name of DAI. So under my own capacity, and these are the things that I have done. The HIO project, which we just get it done, and is a project whereby people living with dementia for the first time in Singapore come together and create a video to represent, to perform for performance using music, arts, and poetry to demonstrate that people living with dementia still have the ability and to challenge the assumption of incapacity and how that impacts our quality of life. My conversation is just now what you have, the 2 video clips that I share with you as a way to turn the table around that. The person who actually asked and host the program is people living with dementia. And some things that are in the pipeline, which I need the support from the government and also from the different stakeholders in our local community, is the young onset guide, which we don't have in Singapore. And another one is the community rehabilitation-based support that I am pushing very hard for. So that is from me, and actually I'm looking forward for Q&A. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was a wonderful and inspiring presentation. You know, I really, how you spoke about increasing cultural representation really resonated with me. And I'm very, I have a lot of admiration for the work that you're doing under your own capacity, this great research and this advocacy that you're doing on your own time as well. I also want to thank Granville for starting us off with that wonderful poem. Granville, I wanted to mention that there were some comments in the chat box thanking you for sharing that, that it was moving and very powerful. I'm going to open up this event to questions. Many of you are muted. Thank you for that during Emily's presentation. So you can either send a question in the chat discussion, or go ahead and unmute yourselves and ask your question, because we have Emily who shared her lived experience, her advocacy journey. So I'm sure a lot of you have questions. So please.
I'll go ahead and start. Forgive me for not turning on my camera. I'm resting in bed right now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Marissa. Thanks.
Emily, I so enjoyed hearing from you today. And I sort of study the looking at improving palliative care for people with dementia. And I was so intrigued to hear about, I don't think I've ever heard rehabilitation and dementia in the same sentence. And that may be just because that's not the area that I'm working in. But I think often in Canada, what I've seen is when people receive a diagnosis, there's not a lot of rehabilitative support. And I just love that idea. And I hope we can see more of that in Canada. Have you seen a lot of that internationally, looking at rehabilitation in the context of dementia?
Currently, I wish I can give you a very positive answer. And no, actually, we are still pushing for it, because I guess that traditionally rehabilitations have been seen as a way of, you rehabilitate, providing this therapy is the purpose is to bring the person back to whatever performance the person used to be. But for a person living with dementia, you have to change the way rehabilitation is being defined, because there is no way we can ever be, after the therapy session and whatever services that we get, we will ever go back, because our brain is no longer at that stage. And so it's more like making a difference to our life by making it easier for us to manage our day-to-day life, maintain our functioning, and then continue with that we are able to stay independent and with minimal support from our care partner, so that there is a quality of life not only for the person living with dementia but for the family, and as a whole it will help to cut down the cost of keeping a person living with dementia alive, isn't it? Yeah, so I mean it is such an important thing, because every time you attend any conference on dementia, that the first title slide is the financial burden of people living with dementia. So I think it should be the first slide of every conference should be rehabilitation to be given to people living with dementia, a way to solve the financial burden of the nation.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for bringing that idea to our attention.
Thanks, Marissa, for that
Welcome.
question.
It's Jim Mann, and I have read, Marissa, how in acute care, rehabilitation can be on a patient's chart, but how the therapist will go into a room of a person with dementia, and that ends up, the person forgets what the instruction is and frustrates the therapist, and and so they just walk away with that feeling, as Emily talked about, that there's really no point. And so I do think it's a disappointing result to date, but Emily and others are really promoting it an awful lot. And even Dementia Advocacy Canada is promoting that more. And it is something that really needs to be emphasized.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
Thanks for that.
Yeah,
Jen.
I just want to elaborate on Jean's point is that, you know, when normally is that people feel that people living with dementia, they have problems in understanding and remembering what they are being taught, the therapy and things like that. But the problem is that the therapy that's being offered to people living with dementia is across the board the same with people who are not living with dementia, and they expect person living with dementia to do the same thing. So the question I always throw to whenever I have a chance to meet with therapists, I say that is, if you have a leg that is broken, do you expect that person to be able to walk immediately? No, right? You will always give allowances. Okay, hold on to the bar and you learn how to walk again. The same thing with people living with dementia. For the same therapy, you have to apply in a different way to make sure that, you know, if the person has an issue of memory, not able to recall, maybe you can come out with a picture diagram so that the person can refer to the visual representations of the technique of how to use rather than a verbal instructions on it. So because I come from a disability as an educator, you know, I see there is lots of opportunity if the healthcare and allied health professional is willing to see how to deliver their service in a manner that the person living with dementia can benefit from it, rather than just from standard way of doing things.
Wow. Emily, I just wanted to say that some of the comments in the chat box are to thank you for your presentation, that it's wonderful, informative, inspiring. There was also a comment about someone being very grateful for you talking about the importance of peer-to-peer support groups. And we have a question from Kishore. He says, thank you, Emily. A very thought-provoking presentation. He would love to hear your thoughts on key priorities that need to be addressed for people living with young onset dementia, which often doesn't get represented as much.
Yes, when we talk about, there are a few things that for young onset, it needs to be put into. First is a very comprehensive healthcare pathway, and a post-diagnostic pathway that is very comprehensive, because for young onset, we still have so much more life to go on, and our families are all very young. So what are the things that we need is very different from what a senior living with dementia needs. So that pathway had to include, you know, once upon diagnosed, even for senior, the question is, help us to find out the diagnosis of a dementia. How does that cognitive impairment affect us? Don't tell us about, you know, that we're going to know that you have this disease and it's the underlying disease that causing the cognitive impairment is Alzheimer's vascular. Don't stop there, but tell us what is the impact, do an accessibility on us. And then especially this is very important for young onset, because a lot of the people are still working people, you know, and then upon diagnosis, most of the time is that they lost their job because of the diagnosis. But if there's an assessment done on the disability, because dementia is recognized as an acquired form of disability under the WHO. So that is again a United Nations CRPD right of people living with dementia, to give us an assessment and then tell us, okay, now this is what you want, these are the impact that it has based on the assessment. Now, what type of therapy or rehabilitation support are outside there in the community that you can reach out to? And through that, and if the person is no longer able to continue to do the work that he or she used to do, like for me, I am no longer able to give, you know, a one-to-one consultation on special needs, because I do get my facts mixed up, and that is very bad. But then it doesn't mean that I stop doing what I'm good at. I still have lots of knowledge on disability. So I progressed on to become an advisor to school. So I don't give one-to-one, but I give on a general one on how the school and the families can work together to support students who are in the gray zone, who has special educational needs, but not severe, to go to a disability school. How do they strive in the mainstream education? So that retraining is very important for young onset so that they can maintain their occupational role, and that will reduce the risk of dementia faced by a lot of people who are career people throughout their life. And suddenly, because of diagnosis, they are told that they had to give up their job. And because they are not equipped with the new, whatever skill that they have, the retraining, so they no longer can cope with the existing job, so they have to leave because they feel themselves also inadequate. Not only they're being asked to go, but they themselves also feel inadequate. So that is a very major issue that I raised up during the, my meeting with the Ministry of Health in Singapore. And in Singapore, I'm very happy that the National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center is going to initiate this year a project called a Dementia Collapse, whereby they will involve multi-stakeholder to come in to talk about, address this issue, this social big issue about dementia. And I'm part of the team, and we are hoping to really change the narrative of dementia landscape in Singapore. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Emily. We have another question from Suzanne. She asks whether the ABA technique is used in Singapore.
Yeah, the applied behavior approach is applied to certain people, more for people who have psychotic behavior, unfortunately. And because I felt that it should not be just for people who felt that other than medication, they are using this ABA. It has to be applied to everyone. Upon the diagnosis, every one of us will go through some kind of very emotional roller coaster life, upon the diagnosis, the early part. And it will disrupt our behavior, and it changes how we feel about ourselves and things like that. So as a person who was involved in using ABA throughout my life as an educator, I felt that it has to be provided, the ABA, to people living with dementia also, and not just because someone has psychotic issue only. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if you had a follow-up to that, Suzanne. Did that answer your question? I'm going to assume that it did. There's another question here, Emily, from Amanda Brown. She says, thank you for your presentation. And your presentation reminded her about how important an early and accurate diagnosis is. And certainly you spoke to about that in your presentation in terms of your journey to diagnosis, which wasn't smooth, as you said. And she finds that with older adults, the GPs don't always like to diagnose until it has already progressed significantly. And I'd be curious to hear, what your comments might be about that, especially when we talk about stigma and discrimination, which was a big part of your presentation.
Yeah, actually in our region here is equally the same, that most GPs are unwilling to give a diagnosis because they felt that giving a diagnosis is like telling the person a death sentence because there is no hope living with dementia. That is why in the Alzheimer report, it said 1 in 3 clinicians have this kind of attitude and not this kind of misunderstanding that there is no hope living with dementia. So during the during the launch time, I asked the question to the panels at who are the writer of this report. I said that knowing that there's 1 in 3 clinicians who thinks like that, there got to be something that we need to do in terms of medical training for healthcare professionals, doctors, and things like that, because that is the only way we can penetrate to and bring in people living with dementia to be part of the guest speaker and lecturer to educate them and show to them that there is still hope and life and you can please proceed on to give that diagnosis. If people will not commit suicide and jump down if you give them that kind of support for people living with dementia. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have another question here that kind of goes along with that in the sense of the importance of peer-to-peer support, because I think, and I can't speak to this, of course, but it must be important to be able to connect with someone who has the same lived experience. And so can you talk a little bit more about how peer-to-peer support groups are working in where you're from in Singapore?
Yeah, because in our region here is that people living with dementia, even though we can start to see through Voices for Hope program, which is run by Dementia Singapore, it's a step-up program whereby we prepare people who are living with dementia with their care partner to step up to do advocacy. But it is always very different when you step out and do your talking as when you are with your group of people who we no need to talk. We are just like, we have this telepathy understanding. If you break down somewhere in your conversation and you loss of words, we just say, oh, it's okay. Don't worry, we understand. And that community of understanding is so important by itself. It's empowering. When I started this peer-to-peer support group, it's because of a request coming in from 2 people living with young onset dementia in Singapore that because of the COVID, they are no longer able to access to the community activities and they find themselves going down very fast. So they asked me, Emily, I know you're very busy. Can you do something to help and support us? So I said that, okay, well, peer-to-peer support group is something that we don't have. Instead of me every time calling out one-to-one and give them support, why don't I just create one? But the big issue is that I don't have a corporate account, Zoom account. No, private one is only 40 minutes. And when I started off, I used my private one, 40 minutes, and then it cut us off, and which is very abrupt for people living with dementia. They thought halfway and cut off. So finally, when I become in the board of Dementia Alliance International, I was given an account. Oh, that's it. I take off already. And now I no need to worry about 40 minutes thing. So we have more people now coming in to join the peer-to-peer support group on regular basis. Is on every Tuesday for 1 hour plus. And we have regular 10 to 12 people living with dementia. It's a very big size. For peer-to-peer support group. For Dementia Alliance International, we normally keep it to below 10. 8 is the max because it gives sufficient time for everyone because everyone is living with dementia at different stages. And then we have our own difficulty. Some people have PPA, takes a long time to come up with words. Some people have processing issue because of the frontal lobe. So they will take a long time to process the information and generate and reply and respond. But then because there is only one peer-to-peer support group in Singapore, I have no choice than ask everybody, please accommodate, and everybody have a shorter air time to talk. And so what we do is that it is a very different version of Dementia Alliance International peer-to-peer support group, because this one I need to make it culturally appropriate. And peer-to-peer support group is not something that is very acceptable in our region here because of the connotation that you got to be seriously wrong to need to go to a peer-to-peer support group. So the stigma is there. So instead of call peer-to-peer support group, I call it La Kopi Lim Te, which is actually bring along your mat and let's talk and chit chat. Yeah. So that is how we started, and then because as being a multiracial, our support group, I have people from different race, and so I normally will try to get these people to participate by speaking in their own language. So in a normal peer-to-peer support group, we will have English, and then we will have Chinese, and then we will have Malay. Unfortunately, I don't speak Indian, so I don't speak Tamil. So I'm not able to provide that service. So currently it's 3 languages in. So when I speak to a person who is from a Malay culture, so I will try to get him or her comfortable by speaking to that person in Malay, so that even though he understands in English, but nothing is as comfortable when you are able to speak in that person's language. So that is a very big plus. And for the same thing for people who are very Mandarin speaking or Chinese speaking, you speak in their language, even though they understand English, it is very different altogether. And so that peer-to-peer support group is a big part in the sense that for the first time, people living with dementia gets to be on the Zoom. They are the highlight, not the care partners. If they need the assistant or care partner had to take a side seat, okay? They are away from the screen just to assist on how to log in and things like that. And if the care partner needs to provide some input, they will need to ask for my permission and will say that into the chat and say, Emily has something to add on to what my loved one is saying. Can I have that? I say, yes, you can. So we call the shot of how many who can be inside there, but the privilege is for people living with dementia. Basically, is to show to people living with dementia that we have the rights and the ability, and then it's also a place to show off the skill. So every session we have people doing poetry. So it's Granville, if you are there at the Lakopi, every session you are welcome to present your poem, your music. We have people who play ukulele, singing song, and then we have people who will read newspaper, because in all the three languages, so we have people who read Malay newspaper, Chinese newspaper, so they do the translation, which is a good way of retaining their ability to translate from their own mother tongue language to English. Yeah, and then we have exercise, incorporated into that, which is just a very short exercise of 10 to 15 minutes, at the end of the sharing session. Yeah, so everybody is very happy and very happy also.
It looks like you wanted to say something, Granville. Did you want to comment on something? Thank you for that, Emily. Oh, Granville. Hi. Oh.
I'm sorry. I have to apologize. I have my office is also an indoor aviary, and I have a very outspoken parrot sitting on my left side here, right side, left side, and he likes to put his 2 bits in every once in a while. So if I go quiet suddenly, it's because I'm trying not to burst your eardrums with his clarion call. But I wanted to say, yes, it's excellent way to share. And Emily asked me earlier to also mention that there was one other poem I wrote called "The Day Will Come," and we decided not to use it because it is at this time it is on YouTube. It is a company, or it is a soundtrack for a video, which is a video of my life. It covers roughly 70 years, from birth to 70-ish. And the poem is about letting go. And because of this experience is an ongoing exercise in letting go of your fear, of your pain, of your anger, of your negativity in general, so you can allow yourself to blossom as a human being in spite of all of that. And consequently, it does reintroduce you into a new life. But the process it's like people always want to be thought of as being wise and gain wisdom, but few want to pay the price that you have to pay to get there, which often entails overcoming a serious obstacle or trauma or other negative events in your life. Through that hard time, you develop wisdom. Dementia is one of those times. and it can teach you wisdom. So the day will come is on YouTube. You just have to Google my name, Bramble Johnson, and the day will come will show up.
We've
It's
put the
about
link.
6 minutes long. The link?
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Um,
Granville, I've put the link up. We've put the link up in the chat if anyone wants
Oh,
to check that
wonderful.
on YouTube.
Okay.
Thank you so much for telling us about
Yeah.
that poem.
You're very welcome. Thank you for doing that because I can't chat and talk at the same time.
Yeah, that's no problem. I had someone here help me because I can't do that either. I wanted to comment on something you said about peer-to-peer support, Emily, and how it needs to be diverse in its nature to really represent the diversity of the dementia experience and the diversity of all of us, of human beings. And there's a comment that kind of goes along with that in the chat, which is from Ziying, and this comment says that to thank you for raising the issue about bringing forward Asian voices of folks who live with dementia. And there's a question about wondering if you can talk about your unique experience that might be quite different from what we know about Western experiences, especially when it comes to advocacy and trying to organize groups in Singapore.
Yeah, can. One thing is that in our people living with dementia in our region here, or even in South Asia like India, we don't have a voice of people living with dementia. When I started to do the step up in Singapore, I was the first person who actually step up to talk without a care partner. Initially, there are people living with dementia who actually do the advocacy, but with the care partner together with them. And it's not that I have anything against care partner. It's just that I felt advocacy of the voice of people living with dementia who can stand alone to do by themselves is more powerful and impactful to dispel any stigmas, to educate the people that people living with dementia is able to do it on their own if the support is given. So it was very difficult to break that barrier, because when I step up, I do have people who challenge me that if you are able to speak on your own without any support, I'm not any care partner, because they are so used to have people living with dementia talk for 5 minutes, care partner talk for 15 minutes, and then suddenly here I come, I change the whole landscape. I talk for all the 20 minutes, give me all the 20 minutes, then I will talk. So there I do receive comments like, if you can talk for 20 minutes without support of a care partner, then are you sure you're living with dementia? So my answer to the person is, even my doctor failed to give me a correct diagnosis. And if maybe you have to wait until the day when I pass away, and then they do an autopsy, and you can get your answer. But for you to wait for that day, you have to bear with me, because I'm going to be around and be talking and talking and talking. So it's a very different culture here to talk. And I actually, what you call, being knocking at the doors of community partner to hear the voice directly of people living with dementia, not through an association called Dementia Singapore, not through a care partner, but through our voice as a person living with dementia, and now to hear how it impacts us and what needs to be done. And it is not an easy one, because of the way people see the society, see people living with dementia, and they felt that, we are not capable of thinking, we are not able to read. And so every time whenever I go to a meeting, I make sure that I'm very well prepared with facts and figures, and the latest one. So then because I had the advantage, I was from disability, so I can talk easily about disability. And when I want to say that dementia is an acquired disability according to WHO, and when talk about CRPD, I'm also very familiar. So then that is an advantage that I have. So it sort of helps to get the people start to take me more seriously, that I don't just walk in, knock at the door, share my story. And for me, advocacy is more than sharing story, but it's using my story to call for a social cause. So when the media always ask me for an interview, I said that you have your agenda, you want a juicy story, I want my advocacy, I want to use this opportunity to create a social change. So, okay, let's work out, in a compromise here. How much juiciness you want, you let me know. I will tailor it, but with the respect to the dignity of people living with dementia. At the same time, you have to agree to me the message that I want to put across. If you cannot take it, I'm so sorry, I cannot take this interview with you. So to me, it's our stand firm. And even though I'm not a very popular person in Singapore, when it's coming to interview by journalists and newspaper and things, I'm more well known outside Singapore, not in Singapore. But that doesn't stop me, that I want to stand firm with my principle, and I don't do it just because that to meet your needs or not. That they have to come to meet at our terms, not we go and meet at their terms. If you want to talk about advocacy, yeah, it's a lot of work, but I'm happy I'm making little progress every day.
Thank you for that. That was amazing to hear. I want to give an opportunity to some of the folks behind me to ask a question if they'd like to, because they aren't able to type in a question. So I'm just going to quickly turn around. Does anybody want to ask a question? Okay, someone said they just want to say thank you. You're awesome. Anything?
Thank you.
Yes, Joey, come on up. Yeah, we've got a question here.
Hi, Emily. I'm Joey, and I'm impressed by what you have done. And I want to ask about your, because you said in Singapore, the advocacy for people living with dementia is not really popular, and I wonder, what do you think about intergenerational, in the future, are you going to invite teenagers to help with your advocacy, and then the development of those? Because in Canada, I saw that there are services engaging the teenagers in the volunteer services. So are you going to getting the help from teenagers, because you are doing a lot, and then maybe teenagers can help too? Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the question, Jing. Yeah, yes, I am working with a lot of the university, and also junior high school students have approached me, and I'm working with multiple groups of teenage with youth, and in coming out, some of them want to come out with film on how to portray dementia. So I'm very keen on that, and actually I give them tips on what is the possible things that you need to consider, and how do you change the narrative of the dementia landscape. And then also when coming with what you call the support, the community support, that is something that I'm hoping the youth within that community can come together. So there is a lot of things that I want to engage the youth, but because all these youth is still, I had to go through their organization. I mean, if it's school or it's university, and I had to go through that. And it's not easy, because I am doing as what you call Dementia Alliance, and Dementia Alliance is a global thing. It's not that it's in Singapore, and so in Singapore they see me as Emily Ong, and it's not easy for me to knock on the door and convince them that, okay, there is this group of you who wants to work on this. Can you give me to work with them? Yeah, so it is not easy, but making little progress, because as long as the youth has the interest to turn it into a project, So they will propose it to their school, to the professor and whatever, and that's where I can come in. Once they build that thing, they initiate it, I can come in to say, yes, this is what what we need. Because like what I said, for the voice of person living with dementia stand alone to do this advocacy is not an easy task. It is very difficult because in Singapore, we don't have any dementia advisory group or whatever working group. It's me and with DAI, appearing every now and then, whereby in our country, people hardly know about Dementia Alliance International. And now because I'm a board member, I can say that, oh yes, I'm a board of Dementia Alliance International and try to build that name of the voice of people living with dementia. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Emily, I have a question for you. I was wondering what you might be able to tell us if someone living with dementia wants to start doing advocacy like you are doing, how can they get started? What would you recommend?
I think the most important thing is that, as an advocate, you need to be very well mastered in your dementia knowledge, so that once people ask you questions, you are able to give them a very accurate picture of dementia. So you have to stay abreast with all the latest research. So research papers, writing and things like that is part of my daily newspaper reading. I don't read newspaper, but it replaced with the research papers. And then Bible reports that is up to date also. So that is one thing, your knowledge. Next is you need to be very well versed in all the laws and things like that. So in your country, what are the laws, what are the healthcare system and things like that. Because there's no point for you to stand up and advocate something that is already in the pipeline or things that you don't want to be seen as ignorant. Yeah. So then the other thing is that you need to build up your advocacy skill. You know your rights as an advocate. What do you stand for? And that is the most important thing, that you don't give in and to meet their terms, but ask them, let's compromise and meet at each other terms. And you meet at my term, I meet at your term. Let's strike a deal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for sharing that. That's really important to know.
And having a mentor.
And having a mentor, yeah.
Yes.
Could you expand a little bit on that? What does that mean? Like, how is that helping?
Having a mentor is that you need to have someone who had gone through the process. Like for me, my mentor is Kat Swaffer. She had gone through the advocacy journey. She know what are the hiccups along the way that I will experience. And when she was mentoring me, I asked her, and I told her that give me 2 years. And when 2 years up, I might consider become the board of Dementia Alliance International, because I want to have my capability built up before I want to sit on the board. It's not just sitting, have a chair at a meeting, but I want to be able to do more than that. So then when she was sharing with me all the hiccups that she had undergo as an advocate and what are the things that an advocate need, and I always tell myself that when will I, how bad and how big is the impact, the hiccups that she endure as an advocate. And actually, it starts so soon. I'm already in her shoes, and I'm encounter a lot of hiccups and resistance from my own local community. And so having a mentor is very important, because in advocacy it's never smooth. There will be a lot more downs than ups. And it's when the downs, you need to have someone to tell you that, no, there are downs. Yes, you have to admit that, but what can we do from there? And so for me, I now become mentor to other advocates in Singapore, how to be an advocate, and that really makes a difference, not just to share the story.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really paying it forward now. This is a final opportunity if anyone wants to ask a question. I just want to say, Emily, that there's lots of comments thanking you for your compelling presentation, that it was inspiring and encouraging, it was impactful. It's really positive comments. Also want to
Thank
give
you
an
so much,
opportunity-
everybody.
Also want to give, did you want to say? Wanted to give an opportunity to Granville, my co-host this evening,
Yes.
to see if he has anything he wanted to end with.
Well, Emily, I want to say that you have broadened my horizons in the realities and the responsibilities of advocacy. I'm very, 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 very new in this role. I'm just sticking my toe in the deep end, as Jim reminded me. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around it and realizing sorry, hardly had to say hello, realizing that there is so much more that I will learn, and it has really caused me to be more, once again, enthusiastic and enthused to continue. And I'm glad that I met you, and I look forward to gleaning as much as I can from our relationship, even though we're on the opposite sides of the world. I'm hoping we can continue. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a privilege to get to know you and to know all of you, to see you, and to meet Jim in person. Okay, in person. And then Norman, is it Norman? I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. Mana, is it Mayana? Norman?
Oh,
Yeah.
Myrna.
Okay, yeah. So it's so lovely to meet fellow people who are in the same community. Yeah.
Yes, I've known Kate for a long time. She's lovely.
Yes, she is.
As we're leaving, also, I would like to actually extend on behalf of the Center for Research on Personhood and Dementia, the CRPD that existed pre-Article 12. I would like to say, again, thank you, Emily, for such an inspiring talk. Again, I wanted to be jotting down notes, and I'm very excited about what you had to say. I also want to say, Granville, again, thank you for your introduction and for your poem. As always, you left me totally touched and reeling. Thank you to many members of the our action group who are here and attending. And also thank you to Mariko for doing such an awesome job facilitating the event and keeping, both in terms of keeping track of what was going on and for your comments as well. So thank you so much for a very stimulating evening to everybody.
Yeah, and I think on that note, that's a good way to end our evening. And I just echo Deborah's sentiments. Thank you again, Emily, and thank you, Granville. And we're getting lots of thank you in the chat. So it's a nice way for us here in BC to end our day, and hopefully a good way for you to start yours in Singapore, Emily.
Oh yes, I have to move on to the next meeting in half an hour's time.
Okay, well, in that case, we should let you go. And we look forward to connecting with you in the future. Have a great day. Thanks again.
Bye-bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Granville.
Thanks, Granville.